governor's race by the numbers. With Election Day just weeks away now, we're breaking down the latest polls showing the top issues for New York voters and how they view Governor Hochul and the other candidates. Hi everybody and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm Ryan Peterson here in Albany. In less than 6 weeks, New York voters will be casting ballots in the gubernatorial race. A new Siena Research Institute poll released just this week, giving a clear indication of where the candidates stand as that vote draws near. Polls showing current Governor Kathy Hochul has a 17-point lead over Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin. Governor also leading in downstate suburbs. Zeldin, meanwhile, holding on to a slim 1-point lead upstate and has gained several points with independent voters. The governor responding to that independent increase this week.
They tend to make their decisions a little bit later anyhow, historically, but I'm really proud of the support that I've earned already from New Yorkers.
All right, joining us now with more on that Siena Research Institute poll is pollster Steve Greenberg. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
So right off the bat here, really no surprise, right? Governor Hochul maintaining a strong lead overall in a very blue state here in New York. But Lee Zeldin seems to have lost a little bit of Republican support, however, maintaining an edge with and picking up a couple points with some independents. What does that tell you?
Well, it's a little concerning for Zeldin on both counts. In terms of Republicans, right now he's got the support of 77% of Republicans, but back in early August he had the support of 84%, and no Republican can afford to lose Republican support in this state and try and win. And a Republican, because this is, as you pointed out, such a blue state, more than twice as many Democrats as Republicans, in order to win, a Republican really has to win independents big, get at least 55–60% of independents, and right now he's only got a 3-point narrow lead among independent voters.
And trying to win those voters over, I've been watching a lot of the campaign ads on television lately, as a lot of people have. Lee Zeldin came out with one really focusing in on crime as a major issue for this state. The ad he has running, he took a lot of criticism for how it portrays people being attacked and people being shot. What I've noticed is some other GOP candidates out there have come out with some newer ads recently that take a much softer approach. Do you know what I'm talking about here, and do you think that's going to work for them?
Well, look, we asked voters statewide, what is the single most important issue for you as you're deciding which candidates to support in November? And then we asked them their second choice. And what we find is, go back 30 years for those viewers old enough to when James Carville famously said during the Clinton campaign, "It's the economy, stupid." 50% of all voters, half, say the economy is one of the top 2 issues for them in deciding who to vote for. 30% say it's their top issue. The number 2 issue, threats to democracy. 34% of voters say that's one of their top 2 issues. Crime is number 3, an important issue to be sure. 29% of voters say it's one of their top 2 issues. It is the second most important issue behind the economy for Republicans, but it finishes 3rd or 4th among Democrats and independents. So that argument clearly works with the base for Republicans, the crime issue, and it certainly works for some independents and Democrats, but there are issues that matter more to them.
Right, and I would think it's almost even a bigger disparity between upstate and those that live in New York City when it comes to crime.
Well, the economy in the downstate suburbs, in New York City and in upstate, democracy is important in all 3 regions, and crime is an important issue. And let's not forget there are second-tier issues like abortion, guns, healthcare that not all voters say are the most important issues for them, but certainly certain segments of the electorate find those issues as important or more important than some of the ones we've been talking about.
Now, the last time you polled registered voters here in the state was about 8 weeks ago. Is there anything that really stands out to you from the last poll compared to this most recent one?
No. In fact, I should point out it was likely voters back in August. It's likely voters now here in the end of September. And what I think is amazing is the dynamics of the race have not changed at all. If we look at beyond just the Hochul-Zeldin race, the other 3 statewide races, because we have races for U.S. Senate, state controller, and state attorney general. Democrats back in August led in all 4 of those races between 14 and 21 points. Now Democrats lead in those 4 races between 16 and 23 points. So the races for all 4 of those statewide offices have barely moved over the last several weeks.
When you talk to these likely voters, you also talked about the possibility of the Democrats retaining control of Congress. What did you find there?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it goes according to what New York is, which is New York is a blue state. So right now, 54% of likely voters say they want to see the Democrats control the House going into next year, compared to 39% who say they want to see the Republicans in control. Not surprisingly, 84% of Democrats say they want the Democrats in control. 85% of Republicans say they want the Republicans in control. And independents, by a narrow margin, 46 to 42% say they'd like to see the Democrats maintain control of the House as well.
Still a couple years away from the presidential election, but how are voters feeling about the Biden administration in this latest snapshot here?
Well, actually, the president, coming off some of his worst New York numbers ever back in the summer, right now is doing pretty well with voters. 51% of New York voters view Joe Biden favorably, 46% view him unfavorably. Back in August, it was dead even, 48-48. His job approval rating took an even bigger jump. Right now, 53% of voters approve of the job that he's doing as president. 46% oppose it, so above water by 7 points. But back in August, he was underwater by 5 points. So right now, Biden doing well with New Yorkers. And not surprisingly, Donald Trump continues to be very unpopular with New York voters. He was unpopular before he was president. He was unpopular with New Yorkers when he was president, and he remains unpopular. So right now, 32% of New York voters view Donald Trump favorably. 63% view him unfavorably. That's identical to what it was back in August.
And real quick, Steve, I find it interesting, even though President Biden is enjoying some favorability there, when it comes to the direction the country's going in, these likely voters still think it's headed in the wrong direction.
No question. Yeah. And what's amazing is the amount it picked up in the last month or so and how low it still is. So right now, 31% of voters say the country is on the right track, compared to 59% of voters who say the country's headed in the wrong direction. But back in August, it was 19 right track, 71 wrong direction. So it picked up a lot, but still seriously underwater. When we look at how voters think about the direction of the state, getting closer to break even. Right now, 41% of voters say the state is on the right track. 47% say we're headed in the wrong direction.
Steve Greenberg from the Siena Research Institute. Always some eye-opening numbers here from your poll, Steve. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
All right, the growing sports betting industry seeing impressive payouts since coming to New York, right? When we return, details from an investment expert and if the popular mobile sports betting, that platform, is growing and growing responsibly. Everybody, welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Ryan Peterson here in Albany. With football season upon us and sports betting seeing new highs here in New York, the state is generating millions this year. Officials say since mobile sports betting was legalized in the state, more than $390 million in tax revenue has been generated. Another $200 million in licensing fees paid by sportsbooks also being generated here. New York seeing progress, while the state of Massachusetts is currently stalled on how to roll out its licenses, now 6 weeks after sports betting was signed into law there in the Bay State. There are currently 9 gaming operators who can accept wagers here in New York. All right, to give us additional insight on some sports betting right now, we're joined by Joel Simkins, Managing Director at Houlihan Lokey Global Investment Bank. Joel, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
Real quick for our viewers, Joel, explain what it is you do for your clients when it comes to the sports betting world as an investment banker.
Sure. As an investment banker, we're advising companies on capital raising as they look to grow their businesses, as well as advising them on mergers and acquisitions when they're ultimately ready to monetize their businesses.
Excellent. So clearly this is a big growing industry right now. New York's realizing it. Massachusetts is getting ready to realize it. When it comes to sports betting and the mobile platforms are out there, which model do you think is working best right now?
You know, one that really ultimately drives competition. Obviously, New York State has a fair amount of operators. I also live in New Jersey. We've got about 30 operators currently. So really it comes down to choice. And I think consumers want preferences much like retail and where they're going to shop online. They want choice, and competition is ultimately good for the consumer. And we're seeing a rapidly developing marketplace in the New York State market.
Massachusetts, I don't want to say they're struggling at the moment, but I know there's a lot of people over there in the Bay State that are antsy, wanting to see this roll out. It's kind of hung up in the State House right now. I know there's something with the licenses and the number that they have to work with at the moment. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, there's some nuances. Obviously, every state really wants to get it right. I think it's, ultimately a matter of time before you see mobile sports betting roll out in Massachusetts. So, listen, there could be short-term delays, maybe over the next 6 to 12 months. I do think the entire gaming industry is anxious to get mobile sports betting rolled out. And, I think to the credit of the gaming industry so far, we really have had a fairly seamless rollout in all the major jurisdictions. It's just a matter of getting all the checks and balances and protocols in place so that, the consumer has a seamless experience. There's no glitches or snafus from an operational perspective. But,
right.
At the end of the day, Massachusetts is going to be a massive sports betting market.
And when it comes to those state legislators, when they're building out a framework here, what are some of the challenges they face as they hope to make this as successful and, as you said, as seamless as possible?
Well, a lot of the technology in the industry is fairly standardized. I think, you've got concerns around geolocation, problem gaming, making sure that obviously minors can't access sports betting. But ultimately, it's really making sure that the operators are up and running, able to hit the market quickly. And really, from an industry perspective, it ultimately comes down to tax rate. And you do have to make this business work from a mathematical perspective. And, at the end of the day, sports betting is a fairly low margin product, and the industry is ultimately focused on the rollout of what we call iGaming, which is casino. That would include slot machines, blackjack, all the games you would find in a casino. That's a more profitable business. And ultimately, once you've got sports plus iGaming, then it becomes a very, economically successful business.
Still very new compared to a lottery, which states have involved in a long time. Do you ever see the lottery, which some states have been struggling to keep people engaged and interested in it? Do you ever see, say, a state lottery and sports betting kind of coming together as one entity, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's always going to be a bit of a separation of church and state from the regulatory perspective. Lotteries typically lived under state lottery boards. Gaming has been regulated by other folks, but you are seeing convergence, and consumers ultimately want a one-stop shop experience. From a lottery perspective, though, it's interesting. I met with a company this week in California called Jackpocket. They are currently the leader in lottery courier in the United States. And it basically allows you, instead of going to your local convenience store, 7-Eleven, Wawa, or whatever it's sort of the neighborhood, Stewart's, I grew up in upstate New York, instead of having to go into the store yourself, you can actually pull up your mobile phone and purchase the lottery ticket online. That's really appealing to younger folks who maybe have played the lottery less often or just don't want to have to go through the hassle of going down to the store. They can pull up their phone and very safely and securely purchase the lottery tickets. I think you're going to see more of that growth as a way to stimulate the business long term.
Sure. And as it continues to grow and those sports books, mobile platforms continue to grow, in your experience, is this happening responsibly?
So far so good. I think, we haven't really had any horror stories at this point from a problem gaming perspective. I do think from an industry perspective, where we have to be mindful is the fact that in Europe, there was a lot of negative regulation when there was just too much marketing saturation And you don't want sports betting commercials running at all hours of the day, particularly maybe when children are watching. My 11-year-old often reminds me that he sees too many DraftKings and FanDuel commercials. So I think the industry is aware that it needs to be responsible, that we can't oversaturate the marketplace. And I think it's going to mature, particularly as sort of the novelty effect of sports betting kind of wanes and we become a more mature and stabilized gaming market here in the U.S., at least from a sports betting perspective.
And there certainly are a lot of those ads, but I think too, things really began to take off when the professional sports leagues here in the States finally embraced this, yeah?
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? I'm a huge sports fan myself, and these conversations around sports betting were taboo with the NFL and Major League Baseball, the NBA, obviously. So I think gaming is something that everybody engages, whether it's doing it from a regulated perspective, doing your March Madness pool with your friends around the office during that time of the year. It is very interesting to see, obviously, the major leagues adopt this as a big economic driver and value creator for them. But you are seeing even other emerging sports jump on the bandwagon, whether it's UFC, other different racket sports are getting behind it. So I think everybody realizes that the consumer has a short attention span. Everybody's going to watch live sports, so it's quite a robust and rich environment versus the other sort of content platforms out there on Netflix, HBO Max, where you're going to lose those customer eyeballs. And live sports, whether it's pickleball all the way up to football, is extremely valuable and has a great following.
Pickleball is exploding right now.
Absolutely.
That's
amazing.
Really
yeah, that's been a whole other phenomenon.
Absolutely. All right, Joel Simkins, thank you so much, Managing Director for Houlihan Lokey. We really appreciate your insight on this and joining us, Joel. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
All right. With elections nearing, state officials are expanding access to voting, right? We'll have a breakdown of the state's renewed online efforts to assist visually impaired voters coming up. All right, welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Ryan Peterson here in Albany. A new electronic system is going to help make it easier for some New Yorkers to fill out their absentee ballots. Our Capitol correspondent Jamie DeLine walks us through how it works.
Election Day is now only 6 weeks away. To make absentee voting easier for New Yorkers who are visually impaired, a new electronic accessible ballot delivery system can help.
So any voter with a visual disability that impairs them from being able to easily read text, the system allows them to use screen reader software or increase or decrease the size of the text. They can also change the contrast to make the font darker or lighter so that they can read it a lot easier than they would otherwise be able to.
Whether it be a tablet, smartphone, or computer, a voter can do this from their own electronic device at home.
The system allows a voter to apply online for a ballot and then to get a link to a portal that will actually have their ballot in the portal, and it can be marked and printed out and mailed in so that they don't need any additional assistance to fill it out.
Voters will also be provided an oath envelope and a prepaid return envelope by mail. Wilson says this new system is more user-friendly than a previous system. And when it comes to security,
this is a fully secure system. We worked with Enhanced Voting, which has done work in a number of other states for both accessible ballots and also military and overseas ballots, which are typically sent in a similar manner by email.
She says the Board of Elections constantly monitors cybersecurity and will continue to do so. In Albany, I'm Jamie DeLine.
Thanks, Jamie, for that. Protesters rallying at the Capitol, calling for the end of a new policy from the Department of Corrections. New rules are tightening restrictions on packages sent to incarcerated persons. Loved ones now have to use specific vendors to buy goods instead of sending their own items from home. The department says the restrictions are in place to keep that contraband out.
Personally, I think it's a punishment on the prison population and advocates out here for work that we've been doing. Holt Solitary, they're really upset about.
Department officials refute the claim, saying that last year, over 500 packages were used to conceal contraband. They are encouraging families to use alternative vendors if they find the costs are too high. They want you to shop around. All right, stick around. We're going to be right back with a look at the week ahead in just a moment. But your reminder here that if you've got a comment, or you got a story idea you want us to flesh out, let us know. You can email Empire State Weekly, see the address right there on your screen, or seek us out on Twitter. All right, and lastly, from us here on Empire State Weekly, we continue to follow the developments when it comes to New York's legal cannabis industry. Starting October 5th, medical cannabis patients and caregivers who are 21 years of age and older and are certified through the Office of Cannabis Management will be able to grow weed at home. Now, the state will be restricting patient growth to 3 mature and 3 immature plants at one time. We're also following the adult recreational cannabis industry, right? Over 900 would-be pot shop operators have applied for only 150 promised growers licenses. According to the state, there will be some adult use sales in New York State before the end of this year. See if that bears out. All right, for now, from all of us here on Empire State Weekly, I'm Ryan Peterson in Albany. We'll see you right back here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over the state of New York. Here is the full schedule on your screen right now of where you can find us on 10 television stations across New York.